Before learning the next thing, a very important thing you need to know which we will cover in this lesson. As we have written some code while learning Express.js, we need to push this code to the GitHub repository. So whenever you create some project, you need to push that code to GitHub. Because when you're working on any project, if something wrong happens like your machine is not starting or you accidentally deleted the project folder or your hard drive crashes, all your hard work goes waste. And you again need to start from scratch. To avoid that, always push your local code to the GitHub repository. So before pushing this code to GitHub, you first need to create a .gitignore file, which is very important to know. So let's first do npm install. Whenever you download any GitHub source code, you first need to execute npm install command to install all the packages. And this Node_modules folder should not be pushed to GitHub when you push the code. So you need to add entry for Node_modules in the .gitignore file. Let me remove that for now so you will understand what happens without adding it. So to initialize the current project as a Git repository, you need to execute git init command from the project folder. And now you can see, all the files are showing in green color now, but as you can see there are 717 file changes. This is because by default files from the Node_modules folder are also included. So when you push your code, Node_modules folder will also be pushed and it will take a lot of time to push the changes to GitHub. So let's add the Node_modules entry to .gitignore file. Now, you can see only 11 files are changed. As I'm using Mac operating system, you can also see the .ds_store file. It's only created on Mac. So I can also add that entry. Now you can see, that's also not tracked by Git and we have only 10 files to push to GitHub. If you don't want to manually keep checking what to add, then you can also use online gitignore generator. Here, you can search for Node and click on Create button. You can see a long list of entries that you can ignore. So you can just copy this content and paste it in your gitignore file. In our case, we don't need it, so we will not use it. And apart from these entries, we also need to add entry for .env file where we will be storing our database passwords, private keys, and so on. So whenever you create any project, first check if you have .gitignore file and it should contain at least Node_modules and .env file entries. This is very important to understand. Because .env file is used to store private information and passwords that you should never push to GitHub, and also you should not share it with others. Sometimes you forget to add the gitignore file with these entries and you directly push the code to GitHub and it becomes difficult to remove that commit history from Git. So whenever you create any project, always make sure you have gitignore file with these two entries. Now, let's push this code to GitHub. So to do that, first log into your GitHub account and type repo.new in the browser URL. You can also type github.com/new if you want. Here, you need to give the repository name. You can give the project name as your repository name so it's easy to find the code. And you can make this repository either public or private. I will keep it private. And now click on the Create Repository button. Now, you will see list of commands to execute. You don't need to execute all of them. You can just copy this command and paste in your terminal of your project. Now, if you execute git remote-v command, you will see that your local GitHub branch is connected to the GitHub repository. Now, you can click on the plus icon in front of the changes title to add all the files to staging area, or you also execute git add command. So let's commit the changes using git commit-m and add some message. Let's say initial commit. You can see all the changes are committed. Now, you can execute git push origin master command to push the changes to GitHub. Now, all the changes are pushed, and if you refresh the repository page, you can see all the files available on GitHub. And if you later want to download this code, you can click on the code button and either click on download zip button or copy the link from the SSH tab. And then you can execute git clone and paste the copied URL. This will download the code from GitHub to your local machine. So we have covered in this lesson a very important thing you should always do whenever you create a new project. So every day, if you make any changes in the code, you should push those changes to GitHub so you will never lose the data. So let's say, later I move this users list at the top of the file, I can push that change to GitHub. So you can see, there is change in one file and you can also see what change you have done. So now, I can just click on the plus icon or execute git add command to add all the changes. Now, let's commit and push the changes to GitHub. You can see there are 2 commits and you can also see what changes are made. So that's it about this lesson.